The rain came down in sheets, a relentless curtain of water that turned the world into a blur of gray and shadow. I stood outside our family home, my fists pounding against the oak door, my voice hoarse from screaming. "Clara, let me in." The wind howled, tearing at my jacket, soaking me to the bone. Lightning cracked the sky, illuminating the house where my sister had locked me out, her silhouette unmoving behind the frosted glass. She didn't open the door. She didn't even flinch. I was her twin, her other half, and yet she left me to the storm. My name is Emily, and that night, as the thunder roared and the world seemed to collapse around me, I swore I'd never forgive her. We'd grown up in this house, a sprawling relic of our parents' dreams, nestled in the rolling hills of upstate New York. It was a place of secrets, of creaking floorboards and hidden corners, where whispers seemed to linger in the walls. Our father, a man of quiet intensity, had built a storm shelter in the backyard, a concrete bunker he'd poured his sweat into during the summer of '98. He'd always said it was for safety, but there was something in his eyes when he spoke of a flicker of something unspoken. Clara and I were inseparable then, two girls with matching freckles and wild imaginations, weaving stories about treasures hidden beneath the earth. We'd sneak out at night, giggling, pretending the shelter held pirate gold or ancient relics. But as we grew older, the stories faded, and so did our bond. Clara changed first. She became sharp-edged, her laughter replaced by a calculating stare. By the time we were teenagers, she was the golden child charming, poised, the one who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. I was the shadow, the quiet one who preferred books to people, who never quite fit into the mold of their expectations. When our parents died in a car accident 5 years ago, the rift between us deepened. Clara inherited the house, the land, the family legacy. I got a small trust fund and a box of old photos. She said it was what they wanted, that I'd never cared for the family the way she did. I believed her, because believing her was easier than fighting. That night, though, as the storm raged and I stood shivering in the dark, something inside me broke. It wasn't just the cold seeping into my bones or the betrayal of her refusal to let me in. It was the weight of years of her taking, her dismissing, her claiming what was mine as her own. I'd come to the house to reconcile, to bridge the gap between us. But instead, I found the door locked and her eyes cold through the glass. I stumbled back, the rain stinging my face, and made my way to the storm shelter. It was instinct, a pull toward the one place that still felt like ours, like a piece of our childhood that hadn't been tainted. The shelter's heavy iron door groaned as I pried it open. The hinges rusted from years of neglect. Inside, it was dry but suffocating, the air thick with the scent of earth and mildew. I collapsed onto the concrete floor, my breath ragged, my mind racing. Why had she done it? Why had she left me out there, knowing the storm was dangerous, knowing I had nowhere else to go? The answer came in fragments, memories of her smug smile when she'd sold our mother's jewelry, claiming it was hers to sell. The way she'd dismissed my grief as weakness. The way she'd always known how to twist the knife just enough to hurt without drawing blood. As I sat there, shivering, my eyes fell on a loose slab in the corner of the shelter. It was uneven, slightly raised, as if someone had pried it up and set it back carelessly. Curiosity tugged at me, a distraction from the pain. I crawled over, my fingers tracing the edges, and with a heave, I lifted it. Beneath was a metal box, rusted but intact, its surface etched with our father's initials. My heart pounded. This was no childhood fantasy, this was real. I pried it open, and inside, glinting in the dim light of my phone, were stacks of cash, gold coins, and a small notebook. I flipped through the pages, my breath catching. It was our father's handwriting, detailing a fortune he'd hidden away. A legacy meant for both of us, not just Clara. The storm outside seemed to fade as I read, the words igniting something fierce within me. He'd written of his distrust of Clara's greed, his hope that I'd find this one day, his belief that I'd know what to do. Justice. That's what he'd wanted. Not just for me, but for the truth to come to light. I closed the box, my hands trembling, and made a vow. Clara had locked me out of our home, our family, our past. But I would lock her out of this fortune, and in doing so, I'd reclaim what was mine. The storm was no longer just outside, it was in me, a tempest of anger and resolve, and I was ready to unleash it. The next morning, the storm had passed, leaving the world slick and quiet, as if it had never raged at all. I emerged from the shelter, the metal box tucked under my arm, my clothes still damp and clinging to my skin. The house loomed before me, its windows dark, Clara's car still in the driveway. She was inside, probably sipping coffee, oblivious to the shift in the air, the shift in me. I didn't knock. I didn't call out. Instead, I walked to my car, parked haphazardly at the edge of the property, and drove away. The box sat heavy on the passenger seat, a silent promise of retribution. I rented a small motel room on the outskirts of town, the kind of place where no one asks questions and the walls are stained with stories no one wants to hear. There, in the dim light of a flickering lamp, I opened the box again. The cash was neatly bundled, crisp bills that smelled faintly of ink and time. The gold coins were heavy, their surfaces worn but gleaming, each one a piece of a puzzle I hadn't known existed. The notebook was the real treasure, though. Page after page of my father's meticulous notes, bank accounts, investments, properties he'd bought under aliases, all hidden from Clara's grasp. He'd known her better than I had. He'd seen her hunger, her willingness to cut me out for her own gain. I spent hours reading, my anger giving way to a cold, calculated focus. Clara had always been the planner, the one who could charm her way into anything. But I was learning to play her game. The notebook detailed a fortune worth millions, far more than the house or the land she'd claimed. It was enough to start over, to build a life free of her shadow. But it wasn't just about the money. It was about what it represented: our father's trust in me, his belief that I could carry on his legacy. Clara had taken everything else, but she wouldn't take this. I started making calls. The first was to a lawyer, a grizzled man named Harold who'd known my father years ago. His office smelled of old leather and cigarette smoke, and his eyes lit up when I showed him the notebook. "This is airtight," he said, flipping through the pages. "Your father was a smart man. He made sure this was yours." I told him I wanted to protect it, to keep it out of Clara's hands. He nodded, his fingers tapping the desk. We'll need to move fast. If she gets wind of this, she'll fight tooth and nail. I didn't doubt it. Clara had always been a fighter, but I was ready to meet her on her own terms. Over the next few days, I worked in secret, transferring funds, securing assets, and setting up trusts that Clara couldn't touch. Each step felt like a small victory, a brick in the wall I was building between her and the fortune. But it wasn't enough. I wanted her to know what she'd lost, to feel the sting of being shut out, just as she'd shut me out in the storm. I began to plan, my mind spinning with possibilities. I'd invite her to the house, confront her, and reveal the truth, not to gloat, but to make her understand the cost of her betrayal. I returned to the house a week later, the key to the storm shelter heavy in my pocket. Clara was there, as I'd expected, her face a mask of indifference when she saw me. "You're back," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "I thought you'd run off for good." I smiled, a tight, controlled smile that hid the fire inside me. "I just needed some time," I said, stepping inside. The house felt different now, less like a home and more like a battlefield. She didn't ask about the storm, didn't apologize. She just watched me, her eyes narrowing, as if she sensed something had changed. I waited until evening, when the light was soft and the air was still. "Let's go to the shelter," I said casually, pouring her a glass of wine. "For old time's sake." She raised an eyebrow but agreed. Her curiosity piqued. We walked across the lawn, the grass still damp from the storm, and I unlocked the shelter's door. Inside, it was just as I'd left it, the slab still slightly askew. I pointed to it, my heart pounding. "There's something you need to see." She knelt, her fingers brushing the concrete, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the girl she used to be, curious, eager. "My sister." Then her eyes hardened, and I knew she suspected something. I didn't show her the box. Instead, I handed her a single page from the notebook, a letter from our father addressed to me. Her face paled as she read it, her hands trembling. "What is this?" she whispered. I didn't answer. I just watched her, letting the weight of the words sink in. She'd locked me out, but I'd found the key to something far greater. And now, the game was mine to play. Clara's eyes burned into the page, her breath shallow, her fingers clutching the paper as if it might vanish. The letter was simple but devastating, our father's words, clear and deliberate, naming me as the keeper of his hidden fortune. He wrote of his love for both of us, but his fear that Clara's ambition would consume her, that she'd never share what wasn't rightfully hers alone. "Emily," he'd written, "you have the heart to do what's right. Protect this for the family, for the future." I watched her face twist, a storm of emotions, shock, anger, betrayal mirroring the one that had raged outside the night she'd left me to drown. She looked up at me, her voice low, almost a growl. "Where's the rest of it?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I leaned against the shelter's wall, the cold concrete grounding me. "It's safe," I said finally. "Somewhere you'll never find it." Her eyes narrowed, searching mine for a lie, but I'd learned to hide my truths better than she ever could. She stood, tossing the letter to the ground, and stepped closer, her presence suffocating in the cramped space. "You think you can take this from me?" she said. "This is my house, my land, my legacy." I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that echoed off the walls. "You took everything else, Clara. Not this." For a moment, I thought she might lunge at me, her hands clenched into fists. But she held back, her mind already spinning, calculating. That was Clara, always 3 steps ahead. Or so she thought. I'd spent years in her shadow, watching her manipulate, charm, and scheme her way through life. But now, I was the one with the upper hand, and it felt like fire in my veins. "You locked me out," I said, my voice steady despite the rage simmering beneath. "You left me in the storm, knowing I had nowhere to go. Did you think I'd just forgive you?" Her lips parted, but no words came. For the first time, I saw uncertainty in her eyes, a crack in her armor. I turned and climbed out of the shelter, leaving her standing there, the letter at her feet. The night air was cool, the stars sharp against the sky, and I felt a strange calm settle over me. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about justice, about reclaiming what was mine. But as I walked back to the house, I couldn't shake the weight of what I was doing. Clara was my sister, my twin, the one person who was supposed to understand me better than anyone. Yet here we were, tearing each other apart over money, over secrets, over a past neither of us could escape. Inside, I poured myself a glass of water, my hands still trembling from the confrontation. Clara followed a few minutes later, her face composed but her eyes blazing. "You're making a mistake," she said, sitting across from me at the kitchen table. "You think you can outsmart me. I've always been the one who wins, Emily." I met her gaze, unflinching. "Not this time." She leaned forward, her voice softening, almost pleading. "We're family. We can share this. Let me see the rest of it, and we'll figure it out together." It was a lie, and we both knew it. Clara didn't share, she took. I stood, my chair scraping against the floor. "I'm done letting you take from me," I said. "You want to talk about family. Family doesn't lock each other out in a storm." Her face hardened, and for a moment, I saw the real Clara, not the sister I'd loved, but the woman who'd do anything to keep her power. She stood, too, her movements slow, deliberate. "You'll regret this," she said, and then she was gone, her footsteps echoing through the house as she retreated to her room. That night, I barely slept. My mind churned with plans, contingencies, fears. Clara wasn't one to give up easily. She'd fight for the fortune, and she'd fight dirty. I thought of the notebook, now hidden in a safe deposit box at the bank, its secrets locked away where she couldn't reach them. But I knew she'd try. She'd dig. She'd scheme. She'd turn the world upside down to find it. And part of Maya, small, aching part, wondered if I was doing the right thing. Was this justice? Or was it vengeance? Was I protecting our father's legacy? Or was I destroying what was left of our family? By morning, I'd made a decision. I wouldn't just keep the fortune from her, I'd make her face the truth about herself. I called Harold, my lawyer, and told him to prepare a letter. One that would lay out everything, the fortune, Our father's wishes. Clara's betrayal. I'd send it to her. Not to hurt her, but to give her a chance to change. To redeem herself. Because as much as I hated her in that moment, I still remembered the girl who'd held my hand during thunderstorms. Who'd promised we'd always have each other. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way back for us. But first, she'd have to face the storm she'd created. The days that followed were a chess game. Each move calculated. Each silence heavy with intent. Clara didn't speak to me, but I felt her watching. Her eyes tracking my every step as I moved through the house. She was waiting for me to slip, to reveal where I'd hidden the fortune. But I gave her nothing. I'd learned to be invisible in this house long ago. A skill honed by years of living in her shadow. Now, I used it to my advantage. Slipping out to meet with Harold. Making calls from the motel. Keeping the notebook secrets locked tight. I spent hours poring over our father's words. His meticulous plans laid out like a map to a life I'd never imagined. He'd written of his regrets. His hope that Clara and I would find a way to heal the rift between us. But he'd also written of his fears that Clara's greed would destroy us. That she'd never see me as an equal. His words were a balm and a wound. Soothing my anger but sharpening my resolve. Couldn't let her win. Not when he'd trusted me to protect what he'd built. Clara, true to form, didn't sit idle. I caught her one morning rifling through my room. Her hands quick and practiced as she searched my drawers. Looking for something, I asked, leaning against the doorframe. She froze, then turned, her smile sharp as a blade. Just checking if you're hiding anything from me, she said. Her tone light but her eyes cold. I didn't flinch. You won't find it here, I said, and walked away, leaving her to stew in her frustration. It was a small victory, but it fueled me. A reminder that I was no longer the sister she could push aside. I began to notice changes in her small, subtle shifts that betrayed her unease. She stopped leaving the house. Her car parked in the driveway day after day. She answered calls in hushed tones, glancing over her shoulder as if I might be listening. I was, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. Clara was a predator, and I was her prey, or so she thought. I overheard her one night, speaking to someone on the phone, her voice low and urgent. I need to know what she's doing, she said. Find out where she's been. My blood ran cold. She was hiring someone, maybe a private investigator, to dig into my life. I doubled down, moving the fortune's assets again, splitting them across multiple accounts, hiding them in layers of legal protections Harold assured me were unbreakable. But the fear gnawed at me. Clara wasn't just fighting for money, she was fighting for control, for the right to define our family's story. And she was good at it. She'd always known how to bend people to her will, to make them believe her version of the truth. I couldn't let her rewrite this one. One evening, I found her in the kitchen, a glass of wine in her hand, her eyes distant. Why are you doing this, Emily? She asked, her voice soft, almost broken. Caught me off guard. This glimpse of vulnerability. For a moment, I saw the girl I'd loved, the one who'd braided my hair and shared her secrets. But then I remembered the storm, the locked door, the cold indifference in her eyes. You know why? I said, my voice steady. You made your choice that night. She looked away, her fingers tightening around the glass. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said, but the words felt hollow, rehearsed. I didn't respond. Instead, I handed her the letter I'd had Harold prepare. It was detailed, clinical, laying out the fortune's existence, our father's wishes, and my decision to keep it from her. Read it, I said. Then tell me you deserve any of it. She took the letter, her hands shaking, and I left her there, the weight of my words hanging between us. I didn't want to destroy her, but I needed her to see the truth, to see herself as I did, as our father had. That night, I dreamed of the storm again, the rain pounding, the door unyielding. But in the dream, I wasn't alone. Our father was there, his hand on my shoulder, his voice calm. You're stronger than you know, he said. I woke with tears in my eyes, the dream lingering like a promise. I wasn't just fighting for the fortune, I was fighting for him, for the family we'd been before Clara's greed tore us apart. And maybe, just maybe, I was fighting for her, too, for the chance that she could change, that she could find her way back to the sister I'd once known. The letter changed everything. Clara read it in silence, her face unreadable, but I could feel the shift in the air, like the calm before a new storm. She didn't speak to me for days, retreating to her room, the house heavy with her absence. I should have felt triumphant, but instead, I felt hollow. This wasn't the victory I'd imagined. It was too quiet, too easy. Clara wasn't one to surrender, and her silence was a weapon, a way to keep me guessing, waiting for her next move. I kept busy, meeting with Harold to finalize the legal protections for the fortune. He was thorough, his office a fortress of paperwork and strategy. She can't touch it, he said, sliding a stack of documents across his desk. Not unless you give her access. I nodded, but the words didn't ease the knot in my chest. Clara didn't need legal access to hurt. Meshed always found other ways. I drove back to the house, the notebook's secrets weighing on me, a constant reminder of the line I'd drawn between us. One night, I found her waiting for me in the living room, the letter folded neatly on the coffee table. She looked different, tired, her eyes red-rimmed, her usual poise fraying at the edges. I read it, she said, her voice low. All of it. I braced myself, expecting anger, accusations, but instead, she looked at me with something like desperation. Why didn't you tell me sooner? She asked. Why didn't you trust me? The question stung, a mirror held up to my own doubts. Trust. She'd shattered that the night she locked me out, but I couldn't shake the guilt creeping in, the fear that I'd gone too far. I trusted you once, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. And you left me in the storm. Her face crumpled, just for a moment, before she rebuilt her defenses. I was scared, she said. I thought you were trying to take the house, to take everything. Panicked. It was the closest she'd come to an apology, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. I sat across from her, the distance between us more than just the table. You've always taken, Clara, I said. The house, the jewelry, our parents' love. You never stopped to think about me. She flinched, and for the first time, I saw something like shame in her eyes. "I didn't mean to," she said. I wanted to protect what we had." I wanted to believe her, but the memory of the storm was too raw, too vivid. "Protect it," I said. "You protected yourself." She didn't argue, didn't fight back. She just sat there, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, and I realized she was waiting for me to decide her fate. I didn't know what to do with that power. Part of me wanted to hurt her, to make her feel the pain she'd inflicted on me. But another part, the part that still remembered our childhood. Our promises, wanted to find a way forward. I stood, my heart heavy. "I'm not giving you the fortune," I said. "But I'm not giving up on you, either." Her eyes widened, a flicker of hope breaking through her guard. I didn't stay to see what she'd say. I walked out, needing air, needing space to think. Outside, the night was clear, the stars a reminder of the world beyond our fractured family. I walked to the storm shelter, the key cold in my hand. I didn't go inside, I just stood there, staring at the iron door, thinking of the box beneath the slab, the fortune that had torn us apart. Was it worth it? Was this what our father had wanted? I didn't have answers, but I knew I couldn't keep running from the truth. Clara had to face her actions, and I had to face mine. The next morning, I found a note on the kitchen table, written in Clara's elegant script. "I'm sorry," it said. "I don't know how to fix this, but I want to try." My heart ached as I read it, torn between hope and skepticism. Clara's apologies were rare, and I didn't trust them, but I couldn't ignore them, either. I tucked the note into my pocket and called Harold. "Set up a meeting," I said. "I want to talk to her. With you there. No more secrets." He agreed, his voice cautious but optimistic. As I waited for the meeting, I felt the weight of my choices settling over me. This wasn't just about the fortune Anna Maria, it was about who we were, who we could be. I didn't know if Clara could change, if she could earn back my trust. But I knew I had to give her the chance. Not for her, but for me. For the family we'd lost, and the one we might still save. The meeting was set for a Friday, in Harold's office, a neutral ground where neither Clara nor I could claim dominance. I arrived early, my hands clasped tightly around a cup of coffee, the notebook's secrets burning a hole in my mind. Clara arrived late, her face composed but her eyes wary, as if she expected a trap. Harold sat between us, his desk a barrier, his presence a reminder that this was about more than just us. "Let's keep this civil," he said, his voice gruff but kind. I nodded, but Clara just stared at the floor, her silence louder than any words. I spoke first, laying out the truth as I saw it. "Our father left the fortune for me to protect," I said. "He didn't trust you, Clara. Not after everything you did." Her head snapped up, her eyes flashing, but she didn't interrupt. I told her about the night in the storm, the pain of her betrayal, the years of feeling like I was less than her. My voice shook, but I didn't stop. "You locked me out, Clara. Not just from the house, but from our family. I found the fortune because I had Tobe, because you left me no choice." She listened, her face a mask, But I saw her hands tremble, her knuckles white. When I finished, Harold slid a copy of the letter across the desk. The one I'd given her in the shelter. "This is your father's will, Clara," he said. "It's clear. Emily has the right to the fortune. But she's here because she wants to find a way forward." Clara's eyes flicked to me, searching, and for the first time, I saw something like fear in them. Not of me, but of losing everything: her control, her legacy, her place in the world. "I'm sorry," she said finally, her voice barely audible. "I didn't mean to hurt you, Emily. I was afraid of losing what we had left." It was the same excuse she'd given before, but this time, there was a crack in her voice, a rawness I hadn't heard in years. I wanted to believe her, but trust was a fragile thing, and she'd broken it too many times. "Then prove it," I said. "Show me you're not the person who locked me out." Her eyes widened, and for a moment, I thought she might cry. But she didn't. She just nodded, her jaw tight. "Harold suggested a compromise trust, managed by both of us, to preserve the fortune for the future. It wasn't what I'd planned, but it felt right. A way to honor our father's wishes without giving Clara everything she wanted." She agreed, reluctantly, her pride warring with her desire to salvage what was left of our relationship. We spent hours hammering out the details, each clause a step toward something new, something neither of us fully understood. When I left the office, the air felt lighter, the weight of the past a little less heavy. Clara stayed behind to sign the papers, and I drove back to the house, my mind spinning. I didn't know if this was redemption or just a pause in our war, but it was a start. I walked to the storm shelter, the key in my hand, and opened the door. The slab was still there, the box long gone, but the space felt different now. Less like a tomb and more like a place where something could grow. That night, Clara came to me, a bottle of wine in her hand. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice soft. I nodded, and we sat on the porch, the stars above us, the house quiet behind us. She told me about her fears, her guilt, the pressure she'd felt to be the perfect daughter, the perfect sister. "I thought I had to hold everything together," she said. "I thought if I let you in, I'd lose it all." I listened, my heart aching for the girl she'd been, the sister I'd loved. "We both lost," I said. "But we don't have to keep losing." She reached for my hand, and I let her take it, her fingers warm against mine. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a step. We sat there in silence, the night wrapping around us, and for the first time in years, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe we could rebuild. Not the family we'd had, but something new, something stronger. The fortune was safe, locked away in trusts and legal protections. But the real treasure was this moment, fragile and uncertain, but ours. The weeks that followed were tentative, like walking on a frozen lake, waiting for the ice to crack. Clara and I moved around each other carefully, our conversations polite but guarded. The trust we'd signed was a bridge, but it was shaky, built on years of mistrust and pain. I wanted to believe in her apology, in the glimpse of vulnerability she'd shown. But the memory of the storm lingered, a scar that hadn't fully healed. She seemed to sense it, keeping her distance, giving me space to process. I spent my days sorting through the house, unpacking boxes of our parents' things that Clara had stored away. Each item a photo, a letter, a worn book felt like a piece of a puzzle, a way to understand the family we'd been. I found a picture of Clara and me, no older than 10, sitting on the steps of the storm shelter, our arms around each other, grinning at the camera. I stared at it for a long time, wondering where that joy had gone, how we'd let it slip away. I left the photo on the kitchen table, hoping Clara would see it, hoping it would remind her. Too. She did. That evening, she picked it up, her fingers tracing our faces. "We were so happy," she said, her voice soft. "What happened to us?" I didn't have an answer, not one that could fit into words. Instead, I sat across from her, the photo between us, and we talked. Not about the fortune, not about the storm, but about the small things, the games we'd played, the secrets we'd shared, the promises we'd made. It was fragile, but it was real, a thread connecting us to the past. Clara started to open up, slowly, like a flower after a long winter. She told me about the pressure she'd felt after our parents' death, the weight of being the one to carry the family name. "I thought I had to be perfect," she said. "I thought if I wasn't, they'd be disappointed in me." I listened, my heart softening, but I couldn't let go of the truth. "You didn't have to do it alone," I said. "I was here, Clara. I was always here." She looked away, her eyes glistening, and I knew she was grappling with her own guilt. We began to work together, not just on the trust, but on the house, the land, the legacy our father had left. We cleaned out the storm shelter, sweeping away the dust, airing out the memories. It was hard, physical work, but it felt like a cleansing, a way to reclaim the space from the pain it had held. Clara found an old journal of our mother's, tucked behind a shelf, and we read it together, laughing and crying at her words, her hopes for us. She wanted us to be sisters, Clara said, her voice breaking. "Not enemies." I nodded, my throat tight. "We can still be that," I said. "But it's going to take time." She agreed, and for the first time, I felt like we were on the same side, fighting for something bigger than ourselves. We started planning for the future, not just the fortune, but the house, the land, the community around us. I suggested turning part of the property into a community garden, a place where people could come together, heal, grow. Clara loved the idea, her eyes lighting up in a way I hadn't seen in years. But the past wasn't done with us. One afternoon, a man came to the house, his suit crisp, his smile too polished. He said he was a lawyer, representing someone interested in the property. "There's talk of a fortune," he said, his eyes flicking between us. "My client believes they have a claim." My heart sank. Clara's face went pale, and I knew she was thinking the same thing I was. Someone had found out about the box, the notebook, the secrets we'd tried to protect. We sent him away, promising to review his documents. But the encounter shook us. That night, Clara and I sat down, the photo of us as children still on the table. "We can't let this tear us apart again," I said. She nodded, her jaw tight. "We'll fight it together," she said. And in that moment, I believed her. The fortune was ours. Not just mine. Not just hers. But ours to protect. To use for something good. The storm had brought us here, but it was up to us to find the way forward. The lawyer's visit was a spark, reigniting the fire I'd thought was under control. Clara and I spent the next days digging through his documents. A tangle of legal jargon claiming a distant cousin had rights to our father's fortune. It was a lie. We knew it. But lies have a way of taking root if you don't pull them out fast. Harold was our anchor, his sharp mind cutting through the claims, proving they were baseless. "They're fishing," he said, tossing the papers aside. "But someone's feeding them information." I glanced at Clara, her face tight, and I wondered if she suspected the same thing I did someone close. Someone who knew about the shelter, the box, the notebook. We didn't talk about it. Not directly. Trust was still fragile, and accusing each other would only break it again. Instead, we focused on the fight, working together to protect what was ours. Clara surprised me with her determination, her willingness to dive into the legal mess, to stand by my side. "This is our family," she said one night, her voice fierce. "No one's taking it from us." I nodded, my heart swelling with something like pride. For the first time, we were a team, not rivals. The community garden became our refuge, a project that grounded us amid the chaos. We broke ground on the land, inviting neighbors to help, their laughter and sweat mingling with ours. Clara was different here, her charm genuine, her smile warm. I watched her hand a shovel to a young girl, showing her how to plant a seed. And I saw the sister I'd lost, the one who'd once believed in something bigger than herself. "This is what Mom would have wanted," she said later, wiping dirt from her hands. I agreed, and for a moment, the past felt like it could heal. But the threat of the fortune lingered, a shadow over our progress. We hired a private investigator of our own, a quiet man named Tom who moved like a ghost. He traced the lawyer's client to a man named Richard, a former business partner of our father's who'd always resented him. Richard had no claim, but he had money, and money could buy lies. Tom found evidence of a leak, someone who'd worked on our father's estate years ago, who'd overheard talk of the shelter and spun a story for profit. It wasn't Clara, and the relief I felt was overwhelming. I'd wanted to trust her, but knowing it was true was different. We confronted Richard together, Clara and I, in a meeting arranged by Harold. He was smug, his suit expensive, his words dripping with false charm. "Your father owed me," he said. "This is my due." Clara laughed, a sharp, cutting sound. "You're a vulture," she said. "You'll get nothing." I stood beside her, my voice calm but firm. "The fortune's ours, and we're using it for something better than your greed." He left, his threats empty, his power broken. That night, Clara and I sat on the porch, the garden taking shape in the distance, a testament to what we'd built. "I'm proud of you," she said, her voice soft. "You didn't give up on me." I looked at her, The sister who'd locked me out, who'd hurt me, but who was here now, trying. I couldn't. I said, "You're my family." We didn't need to say more. The fortune was safe. The garden was growing. And we were finding our way back to each other. Months later, the garden bloomed, a riot of color and life. A place where the community came together, where children played and neighbors shared stories. Clara and I worked side by side, our hands in the dirt, our hearts lighter. The storm shelter stood in the background, no longer a place of secrets but a reminder of what we'd overcome. We turned the fortune into something good: scholarships for local kids, repairs for the community center, seeds for the garden. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the legacy we were building, together. As I stood in the garden one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky, Clara joined me, her arm brushing mine. "We did it," she said, her voice full of wonder. I nodded, my eyes on the horizon. The storm had passed, and what remained was stronger, truer. We'd locked each other out, but we'd found a way to let each other in. And that, I realized, was the real fortune: our family. Flawed and fractured, but ours to mend, ours to keep.